Welcome to the Blind Apex Podcast, where amateur club racers tune in to get faster.
I'm your host, Con John Turk, and on this episode of the Blind Apex Podcast, we're talking about dyno tuning. Joining me, dear friend, one of two people I trust to work on my stuff without me being around. Honda Challenge racer, though he's on sabbatical. I wish he'd get off sabbatical. And my personal dyno tuner, Deren Ardinger. Welcome to the show, man.
Hey, Con. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. You literally are the person, you and Jason, I would give my car to and walk away. Everybody else, I'd be pacing, chewing my nails.
That's a huge compliment.
Yeah, it's hard to find somebody you trust, and this is right up your alley because you're also the person I trust to tune my cars or my car, because I don't own two at the same time, though I've had two.
Tuned both of them in the past.
Yeah. So, and it's important to build that relationship, I feel, with somebody who tunes your vehicles. It's a comfort thing. But before we get too deep into it, let's talk about your background in racing, because I remember you years ago, you were not in a Honda Challenge car, and just your background spinning wrenches and stuff. So let's get into that, please.
Well, I guess we'll start with racing. So I guess it was about 2008. I started out doing a couple track days in a CMC Firebird. That turned into me taking what is my current Honda Challenge car and just doing some very light modifications to it, and going through all the DE stuff with NASA, Mid-Atlantic, till about, I guess it was late 2009. I'm trying to remember. I think it might have been 2010. I went in for my competition license in the same CMC car, although now it was an American Iron car. Did my comp licensing in that, and then almost the next day jumped up and we were running the American Iron Extreme car, which is the 67 Chevy 2. If you've seen it on track, it hasn't been out for quite some time now, but if you happen to remember it, that was always a fun car. Then I started racing Super Unlimited in one of the old ASA stock cars. That was just an absolute hoot to drive. Super fast, no aero on it really, but just super fast straight line speed and mechanical grip. And I took a little time off and started building the Honda Challenge car because the Mid-Atlantic field was growing again. I always liked it. I always liked the camaraderie and just, front wheel drive car going out there and ripping around on three wheels just always looked like a lot of fun. And I started racing Honda Challenge 2016 up to, I guess, 2019. And just kind of life got in the way, and I've just been doing other things.
Yeah. Cars
coming back together, but I haven't really had a chance to work on it a lot lately. So we'll get there.
Yeah. You do cars every day. I remember all the cars you went through. They're all still around. It's not like they were disposable, but I was like, who is this guy? He has more cars than he knows what to do with. He has everything.
In fairness, the Honda's the only one that I actually own.
Right. But I didn't know that at the time. I was just like, wow, look at him. He's got everything. So,
right. My old racing buddy, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago, actually on the 3rd, just before the 4th of July, Richard Lockery, he had a fleet of cars. Actually, I still have a fleet of cars. Most of them are in my garage. And it was just a growing partnership with him where I was working on the cars and maintaining them and keeping them running. And we would go out and go race for the weekends. And as his health kind of slowly was going down, he just kept pushing me into them, and you couldn't tell him no. I was driving him, and it didn't matter if we fought tooth and nail.
Sounds like a good friend.
Oh yeah, one of the best people I've ever known.
Yeah, when they're trying to pass their passion on to you, and you're really looking and enjoying it, so you can't find a better friend than that. So
yeah,
he will be missed. So
missed dearly.
So
then I guess mechanic stuff. You wanted to talk about that. It was about the same time frame. I've grown up always working on cars. My old man was a mechanic. Is a mechanic. So I've been reaching in the toolbox since I was tall enough to pull the drawers open, and working on everything I could. So the mechanics part of it and understanding engines and carburetors and all that kind of stuff just kind of comes naturally from years of watching my father do it, and then just tinkering with stuff myself, and that just evolved into a career. And I started officially working as a mechanic, I guess also about 2008. Believe it or not, before that I was a semi-professional rock climber. That kind of took off. I worked for Mach 5 Motorsports for a little over 12 years. Grew exponentially during that time under tutorship of Mike Gerber, the owner of the shop over there. Just taught me oodles and oodles of stuff and knowledge, and just learning and progressing from everything there. And then it was a couple of years ago, I moved over to GT Peace Automotive, where I'm continuing to do all the same stuff and more that I used to do at Mach 5. So all the race car setup stuff, some light chassis fabrication, exhaust fabrication, all that same stuff, just more resources.
Yeah. And in that time, I think in the Honda Challenge world, and maybe even at the track in the race car world, you're probably touted as the best troubleshooter there is. I mean, Jackie brought her car down from New York, for God's sakes, for you to figure out what was going on with it. So,
yeah, that was an interesting one.
Yeah. So your resume is quite lengthy. I know when I started, I appreciated your help all the time. Tuning, trackside, you'd just be like, it's this, go fix this, go hurry up and put the axle in. You know how to do it, go do it, So I appreciated the camaraderie and the encouragement while we were.
Yeah, of course. That's
trackside.
what it's all about. That's what the whole class has done for me, and I've tried to reciprocate and do that for everybody else. And everybody learns and benefits from each other. It's a great community.
It really is. I'm finding out that it's not just Honda Challenge. So as I talk to other guests who are, E30 guys or Spec Miata folks, they're all pretty decent. They want the competition out there. Competition breeds more competition. The more competitive you are, the faster you have to go. It just creates it's a good environment, but it creates an environment that people need to push themselves and get faster. And it's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And you get faster not only by pushing yourself, but by having others push you. So, and you're right. And it's not just in the Honda Challenge community. It's pretty much the entire paddock. You'd be hard pressed to find somebody that if you went up to them and said, "Hey, I need help with something," they'll tell you no.
I mean, there are some outliers, but you're not really going to find them. There are probably some jerks out there, but it's really hard to find them, especially if they already have a beer in their hand and it's in the evening time. You'll get help. That's not a problem. So
just make sure you get it in the evening time before they wake up in the morning.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Deren. So let's pretend that I'm a noob. I mean, I am a noob, but I'm a noob. I'm like, okay, I have this new car. and my class requires a dyno tune because we have horsepower caps and rules. When I start calling around, how do I find a good tuner? What kind of questions should I ask? At least the bare minimum.
Well, the first thing you need to start with is making sure, obviously, that tuner has the knowledge and the capability, meaning hardware, software, to even tune your platform. There's tuners out there that specialize in maybe one or two specific platforms. They don't necessarily want to do a whole plethora of different tuning softwares because it gets confusing. There's a lot of nuances between, say, tuning like HP tuners and Hondata, or standalone stuff like AEM and Haltech, or even Ecutech, which is kind of like HP tuners. It's all that stuff is all different. It's all a little bit different user interfaces. And as a tuner, whenever we start a new platform, we always end up sitting there for like an hour just setting up the software in a way that makes it usable for us to do what we need to do efficiently. And most of that comes from the data logging side of it. But so reaching out to a tuner, making sure that they are willing to tune your platform, that they maybe have done them in the past, or that they're at least familiar with the software and, how the car responds and produces power, and then going from there. If they're willing to do it, then you guys start talking about pricing and time frame and that kind of such.
Yeah, pricing and time frame, they're something to consider. I think we normally budget for like half a day on a refresh, and usually most of a day, if not all of the day, for like when the car was new, when the 8th gen came to you. There was different. I don't know if you had tuned on Flash Pro before, but I know that
once before, but nothing that was as elaborate as your car. Typically,
right.
When you're taking a car to a dyno and you're tuning it, you're just tuning it to make max horsepower. In your case, when you got to make a class limit, it becomes a little bit more tricky, especially with a Honda, as you well know. So,
when you're detuning, it takes time, and you want to
detune
it the right way.
Quickly.
Yeah,
right.
So you want to detune it safely, and you want to detune it optimally, and that. I think we'll get into those types of conversations later, but so say I've called you and you're like, yep, we're going to do it in 3 weeks. In those 3 weeks, what should I be focused on?
Well, obviously the simple things that sometimes go overlooked. Make sure the car has oil in it. Make sure that it's got a good set of tires on it, because if you show up with a set of lumpy tires that are flat spotted, or they're just your trailer / garage tires and they're not exactly round, or they're not balanced, that'll affect not only shaking the tuner's brain while he's trying to tune the car, but it will actually translate to your dynagraphs as well and can affect power. So make sure you got good rollers on it. Gas, make sure you got fresh gas in it, and you have at least a half a tank. If you're just going in for a touch-up tune, like no hardware changes, quarter tank's usually fine. But, obviously make sure you got fresh gas in it. One thing that goes overlooked a lot, I'll ask people, when was the last time they did a valve adjustment? B series, H series cars, K series cars, they all need to have a valve adjustment done every so often. And, we're out there on the rev limiter an awful lot, and that causes the valves to wear faster. So, do a valve adjustment. If you know how to check your ignition timing, check it. That's something that I'm probably going to do anyway, just to make sure that I know what reference timing is. K-Series guys, you don't have to worry about that, but any of the Golden Era cars do. What else?
I know that I had a vacuum leak we chased down one time that I thought was not a vacuum leak because I didn't smoke test it, but I sprayed all over my engine bay and it never like surged. So I thought it was in the tune. We definitely found the leak on the dyno. That cost me time on the dyno.
Yep.
So
yeah, the last thing any tuner wants to do is have to start diagnosing. So,
yep.
But at the same time, a lot of times that's what the tuner is there for, is you got unresolved problems that you can't figure out. And sometimes it's something very simple, like a vacuum leak from possibly just a split hose.
Yeah. You also, my S300 wasn't fully compatible, so we had to put VTEC on a solenoid.
Right. Yeah, I remember that in the old car.
Yep, in the old car. What else?
Yeah, that was kind of a kludgy, slap it together and wire it into the VTEC solenoid, make it work. That wasn't my best work, but it did its job.
Yeah, it worked for 2 years, 2.5 years. It was fine. Right. There was a lot more wrong with that car than that. So,
throttle position sensors go bad. Sometimes they're working fine when they're cold, and then they get hot and tolerances change, and all of a sudden you may have bad throttle position reading, and that's going to obviously affect how the car performs on the dyno. So, of things for us as racers to have, especially on the older cars, you should always have an extra throttle position sensor in the trailer, because they go bad. You may not know it. It's a quick, easy swap of 2 screws usually, and you're back on track or back on the dyno.
Yeah. We'll skip over one of these things because we're getting into some of that stuff that we should bring. So I learned over multiple tuning sessions with both cars with you that essentially I needed to bring at a minimum my trackside toolkit, not my full gear, but something easy to get to. I know when you're tuning at Mach 5, you had your full get up, but when we go up to RPM now, it's better just to bring my own stuff just in case, because I know it's convenient for my car, right?
Right.
And then to bring my spares box, and my personal spares box for my K series. Now it's different for everybody, but in my spares box, I carry a whole throttle body because I'm drive-by-wire. I was ready that if we had a drive-by-wire issue, we were swapping throttle bodies. We didn't, but I was ready. I had a full set of coils because in the past we had distributor problems. I had to go drive and buy a distributor. Cost me dyno time, all that jazz. So, which
you could just equate to in general. When was the last time you did a tune-up? How old are your plugs, your wires, your coils if you're coil unplugged, your coil in your distributor if you have a distributor car? All that stuff is going to get kind of put to the test on the dyno. You're going to be on there for possibly a few hours, and ignition components, as they get hot, tend to quit working. So all of that stuff, if you haven't already changed it recently, you should change it.
Yeah.
Or have it. Have it.
I'll bring my backups for it. I learned that lesson. So I brought you a VTEC powered diesel motor one time. We had to put spark plugs in it. The motor was no good. I didn't realize what you were talking about. You were like, I don't understand. I add fuel and it makes more power. When I lean it out, it makes less power.
Well, nobody told me that it was huffing like a freight train out of the tailpipe.
Well, so there's issues that occur, right, at the dyno.
Right.
I brought you a motor that I thought was good. It was not. That was basically not a lost session. We got close enough that when the new motor went in, it was more of a touch up and less of a full tune, but issues occur. So you got to be mentally prepared for that. And you need to bring things that you would normally bring to troubleshoot your engine trackside, ignition systems, the spark side being the big one. I'm not sure I don't know how many times you've run into a fueling issue while you're tuning people's car, but
not in the Hondas, but in other platforms, yes.
Yeah, so if you need, I carry a spare fuel filter. I don't carry injectors for the new car, but that might change shortly. Yeah, you need to carry certain things that are appropriate to keep your engine running at all times. And, one of the questions you asked me when we brought you the second motor after the first motor was diesel puffing out the back end was, did I need to break in my engine? So what kind of considerations do people need to have if they need to break their engine in on the dyno?
That's a good question. And one that I've answered quite a few times, actually. Obviously, if you got a brand new, fresh built motor, the last thing you want to do is just start wringing it out. Most motor builders will tell you that you can drive it on the road or you drive it on the dyno, either way, that you run it up and down through the RPM slowly. Let it run the rings in, let it run the cams in, let it run the bearings in. Just start out between like 1,500 and 3,000 and just bring it up real slow, and then just let off and let it idle back down, and then go back up and idle back down and go back up and idle back down, and do that for about a half an hour. And then go up a little bit higher, go between say 2,000, 4,000 or 2,000, 4,500 or so, and just do the same thing. Bring it up real slow, let it just engine brake itself back down, bring it up real slow, let it just engine brake itself back down. That way it's kind of rubbing in or burnishing in both sides of the rod bearings. Mm-hmm. Some tuners tell you, or some motor builders, I should say, tell you after you've done that, you should be good to let it eat. By then you've got at least probably 50 or 100 miles on it. I don't like to just let it eat. I like to let it cool down, not necessarily all the way, but just cool down enough, get out of the car, check things over, make sure there's no oil leaks or anything else that might stick out. Or if I while doing that, I was data logging and I saw something that I didn't like, I might investigate that. Typically just kind of take a break and go get lunch, and then come back to the dyno and start making low power pulls. So VTEC off, just working through all the low speed maps on a Honda. And if that's all looking good and everything seems on par, we'll turn VTEC on and start working through the high speed maps. I've done LS motors the same way, where it was a fresh built ProCharge supercharger car and put it on the dyno, and I just ran it up and down through the RPMs for an hour, and then that was at the end of the day. So I came back to it the next day and actually started tuning on it. And just, it's good to just run the engines in slowly, let them, scuff the cylinder walls and seat the rings and all that kind of stuff that I already mentioned before.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I may be facing a mild refresh on my car, so that's a personal question, but also something people need to be aware of. We
Mark Rivniak, we just did the same thing on his. He got that new C5 motor all put together and everything, and brought it to me with like 0 miles on it, like literally out of the garage, in the trailer, out of the trailer, on the dyno. So we went through that whole process on his car.
Yeah. And there's no problems with that engine. Trust me. It's fast. But
as I my fingernails and rub them on my shoulders.
Yeah.
And hats off to whoever built that engine too. I forgot who it was, but seems to be pretty well put together.
Yeah, it's a barn burner. So, but even if I brought you one from the importer or the junkyard, we really have to go over these things, and we have to be prepared when we're at the dyno, right? I brought coolant with me because I didn't know if I was burping it well enough, if we ran into that issue. Because, K-Series cars are notoriously hard to burp. Sometimes they like to be run in before they even burp. You'll just find that you're low again, and you just top it off and keep going. I brought all sorts of stuff just in case we got into trouble. But that's the thing. You want to be very well prepared. You want to prepare before you get there, and then you want to bring this stuff for you to be prepared while you're there. So
yeah, absolutely.
You want to maximize this time.
You don't want to have to take a car off the dyno and send a guy home and then have to bring them back another time. Like, most of us that are tuning cars, it's probably not our day job. We're doing it on the side, or in our free time.
Right.
And sometimes it's tough, especially with me trying to get scheduling in on the weekends, and I got to go rent a dyno and all that kind of stuff. I don't want to have any mishaps, so I certainly appreciate your preparedness and making sure that the car's ready to go when it gets there. So hopefully I don't have to get into burping cooling systems or doing diag because we found a misfire or whatever else.
Yeah, it saves you time. It saves the tuner time. People are less frustrated, and it gives the tuner time to concentrate on what they're doing. So one of the big things is you and I have had conversations about expectations during dyno sessions. Mostly because our class has a horsepower cap. So in the old motor, we needed to make, I think, 190 horsepower. In this new motor, we needed to take horsepower out of it. And in all these situations, even if you were in time trial or ST or in a super unlimited class where you are looking to make the peak horsepower that you could possibly peak, maybe you want a flat tune in the car. Maybe it's easier to drive that way. These are conversations you need to have with your tuner. But I guess you and I have talked about, because it's simple, basically where I want the rev limit to be. I think that's the in-depthness of our conversations. Is it freshly built? And what's the rev limit? And then we sort of talk about it. But there's lots of conversations that can be had. So what kind of considerations, what kind of conversations do people need to have with their tuner about, I guess, what's important for you to know about their engines?
Well, obviously how it's built, what kinds of rods, pistons, even mention what bearings are in it. How's the valve train put together? Is it got upgraded cams and springs? Can we rev it higher? The tuner knowing how far they can push the motor to maximize your power band is always important, especially in I don't want to say spec class, but a class that's limited horsepower wise. You may only be able to make 200 horsepower, but if you can extend that 200 horsepower a little bit farther than stock, that's always good. So if it's a car that's got upgraded valve train and you can turn it an extra 1,000 RPM safely without kicking a rod out of it because the rods aren't able to handle it or something like that, that's stuff you should tell your tuner about, because they'll take that into consideration, and they might take a stock red line of 7,500 and lick it up to 8,500. Of course, you don't want to turn a motor that far if the power starts falling off. So
right.
It's just it's all a balance.
So say I'm rich from Texas. I got an oil pump set up, oil rig in my backyard, and it's just producing me $100 bills by the minute. And I had like 4-piston build me an engine. Okay.
So you're really rich.
Yeah, real rich, right? Because I'm not, but like real rich 4-piston money. And they provide me with a build sheet where they like degreed the cams, clayed the motor, all that stuff. That kind of stuff you would want to see, right? So you know what your piston to valve clearance is, that kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Any information, the more information you can give your tuner, the better, because then they'll have more confidence in pushing the motor harder. So if they know that it's a bottom end that can handle over 1,000 horsepower, and it's got the top end to support some high RPM, even though your car might make only 500 horsepower, they're going to push it as hard as they can. Whereas if you're on a engine that's got, say, stock rods in it and stock valve train that could also make 500 horsepower, they're going to be a lot more lenient about how hard they push it to get to that 500 horsepower. And you might get to that 495 mark and they're like, it's good enough. And you're sitting there going, come on, make 502. And at 502, it goes boom. Yeah. That's what we don't want as a tuner. Nobody that tunes a car wants to hurt anything or blow anything up. We have great deal of pride in our work, and that's the last thing we want to see is not only a car blow up on the dyno, but a car blow up ever.
Right. Nobody should want to see that. It doesn't. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, because I know what it takes, But I think that sort of gets into the conversation that people need to listen to their tuner, because you'll know what this dyno is reading and how it reads, and somebody will come up to you and be like, "Come on, I know everybody says this setup makes 500, but your dyno reads lighter than most people's, right?" And you gotta, as the customer, you have to listen, because you want safe tunes, quality tunes. You don't want to be on the edge. Being on the edge, especially in a track situation and in a race situation, we put our cars through hell. So being on the ragged edge, you can choose to do that if you really want to, but you will also spend money on new engines. It may not blow on the dyno, but it'll probably blow on the track when it's extra hot.
And that's almost worse.
Right. Oh, yeah. Because then you're going to get the cleanup. Well, you're going to get a cleanup bill anyway. But
you're getting a cleanup bill either way, whether it's on the dyno or it's on the track. At least on the dyno, the car is sitting still. You pop a motor on the track and oil down and get it underneath the tires and everything, that could be catastrophic.
Yeah.
For not just the engine, but for the whole car or for somebody else's car.
Right. And then it's track time and potential tire wall repairs and the stuff you did to your car and the engine, and then the guys behind you. Like, you don't want to do that. So talk to your tuner. If you're hitting your marks and you're safe, and maybe you want to flatten it out. If he says we can't flatten it out without putting things at risk, just accept it. You don't, I read this on the internet. I've never heard it from you, but I read it on the internet where people argue with their tuner. Like, I didn't bring my car to you for me to do the work. I trust you. This is part of the relationship, right? I trust what you have to say. You need to find that person that you trust, and you need ask friends, get word of mouth from other folks that drive similar cars. You need to have that relationship, because you don't need to be that pushy guy who's like, my car needs to make 500. If you need to make 500, go. I think you need to trailer all the way to the West Coast. I think Church's dyno reads pretty high. That's the rumor. It's been the rumor for 20 years. Like, go over there and throw it on that dyno, right? You'll get your numbers, but trust your tuner. If you provide him the best, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, if you put in the work to prep your car, if you put in the work to keep it clean, to have it built right or build it yourself right, trust what the tuner is telling you. If it's not going to make the power, it's not going to make the power. Maybe you need to make a change. You've made recommendations before, different intake, bigger exhaust, whatever. Do those changes and come back. But don't push the ragged edge at that moment. So,
right. Yeah, absolutely. And I've been fortunate enough that I've not really had many of those pushy customers. Honestly, most of the time when I'm tuning a car, I'm by myself anyway. But the only one that kind of stands out is I was doing a Camaro, LS Camaro, and it was making like 595 or something like that. Like it was right there. It was close to 600, and it was the father actually of the owner of the car. He was like, "Come on, that thing will do 600." And I was like, "Man," I'm already on it. I think this is it. I think it's as far as it's going to go. He's like, "Come on, just push it a little harder." And I was like, "All right, I'll try, but if anything happens, it's on you." I'm like, I'm already on the ragged edge. We're already running kind of lean, and we're running a lot of timing. And I pushed it one more pull, turned up a little bit more, pushed it one more pull, and it was like 594. And I looked at him, I was like, "That's it, dude. Like, that's 3 of them back to back." I just kind of softened everything back up, made it a little bit more conservative, made sure it still was making that same power, but it just didn't have all that extra heat in it. Really, that's all it is. When you try to make more power, you're just making more heat.
Yeah, it's a game everybody needs to play, but you need to understand that the tuner is essentially your coach, and you just need to listen to them. If they say it's done,
well,
it's done.
We're more like the car whisperer. We're if you're experiencing a platform and you know what you're doing with it as a tuner, you pretty much know as you're reaching that threshold where the threshold is going to be. Right from the first pull, if everything's going smooth, right from the first full pull, I can pretty much tell you how much power it's going to make before the dyno session's finished. I'm not going to tell you that because I don't want to get your hopes up and or disappoint somebody, but I have a pretty good idea where we're going to end up.
Under promise,
after just
over
the first
deliver.
full pull. Exactly.
Yeah. And really, if you need to make a goal, and you're not making it, the tuner's telling you you're not making it, but you really need it, you need to sit down and talk to them and really go over the car bumper to bumper. I'm sure they'll have recommendations. Mm-hmm. Maybe you need more fuel. Maybe your fuel system needs to get upgraded. Maybe you need a different intake. Maybe you just need to divert some heat out of the engine bay. The world is your oyster. There's lots of things that can be done. depending on your class. So if you're not making it, if you're having problems, poor Steve Brown, he's running around with, I don't know, the Crowler knockoff ITR plus cams. Well, they were running, I think they were running plus 10 degrees in the cam. They ground it into the cam. Those cams were terrible.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that. Obviously, he put stock ITR cams in, and the car made a lot more power on a lot less ignition timing, which is always a good thing. You don't want to run ignition timing any higher than you absolutely have to. Especially on a Honda, they don't kind of have a detonation threshold, a knock threshold. So B series cars, you can just push them and push them and push them. They won't ping. They'll just stop making power, and then all you're doing is just creating more heat in the cylinder, and that's just eating up valves, eating up pistons, eating up rings,
Right.
and that's completely unnecessary. So you don't want to run any more ignition timing than you need. And if you got a car that you're just hammering with ignition timing to try to get that power out of it, you need to probably go back and look at what else might be going on, what else could be wrong.
Yeah. But those are discussions you need to have. If it's underperforming, you need to, if your tuner doesn't have a clue, sometimes they don't understand your platform. They may tune your platform, but they may not have enough insight. You need to start talking to people.
Mm-hmm.
But generally speaking, when I work with you, you're like, okay, maybe you need a different intake. I mean, I know we tested, 3 or 4 different variations of intake on the old car, just to find the optimal, right? We had enough time left in the day. We had plenty of time left for the dyno. So we tested, if you come prepared,
right. And
if you come prepared and things aren't going sideways, you have time for that kind of thing. In the new car,
absolutely.
In the new car, you needed to figure out how to take power out of this car, and I was happy to let you figure it out because I knew you were going to do it safely, and optimally.
Right.
And my graphs show it.
I couldn't do it the way I wanted to, but we were able to do it.
We can talk about that.
That's just that's just a hiccup of Flash Pro.
Yeah, well, how familiar are you with Haltech? Because Haltech makes things easier, but we won't talk about that with, like 1,000 downloads.
Makes it easier. Yeah.
So anything standalone will make it easier, but at the same time, your install will be more complicated. So
of course,
you need to either know somebody who knows how to install it correctly, know how to install it correctly yourself, or pray, because that's one of the issues, right? Okay, so let's talk about my car and putting a Haltech in. If I put a Haltech in, I need to run a boom slang harness because it's essentially like a super piggyback to the stock ECU, because the stock ECU is needed for a bunch of other stuff that Haltech won't necessarily deal with or deal with legally in my class. So I have to run a special harness and hook this thing up correctly. And then it's almost required to have the Haltech dash in my car because it starts robbing and stealing from the CAN bus. So at that point, I install all this stuff, and I would want to do testing on my car, let's say in Mexico, before I brought it to you, right? Because I don't want you to have to deal with a car with wiring issues,
Right.
Yeah.
And that's another thing you can work with your tuner on.
Right.
Often remotely even is doing the initial setup on a standalone and a dash and that kind of such. You can usually team view them in to your computer, and they can, set up your parameters and set up your sensors and make sure everything's talking back and forth, and have you go through checking to make sure the throttle's working and it's opening fully, and just all that general stuff before you even get to the dyno. Of course, there'll probably be some kind of a fee for that, but a well-rounded tuner can usually do all that stuff remote, so that it takes the strain away from both of you come dyno day.
Yeah. And I think that's the biggest key of this episode, is you need to try to make dyno day as painless as possible, because that's when you'll hit your goals, or be able to hit your goals, be able to do testing, maybe of intakes, or God forbid you have enough time to swap intakes, or not intakes, but exhausts or something. But you'll be able to explore different options. If my car that I brought to you was leaking and doing all these crazy things, you wouldn't have had the time to optimally detune my car, right? So
Right.
Being proactive in your car preparation, your engine preparation, minimizing leaks, keeping the wiring tight, checking for anything, being prepared while you're there. You don't want to take the extra time to run to AutoZone when you can just go to the back of your truck and pull out your black and yellow tote and find your part.
Mm-hmm.
Fix it and carry on. Lose 15 minutes instead of hour and 15 minutes, So you really want to be prepared, because you want to optimize that time. I know we race for fun.
Right. Like I said, a lot of those tuners don't have a dyno. We're just tuning the cars. We don't own the dyno, so we're renting it. And a lot of times we're paying by the hour for dyno rental.
Yep.
And that's costing us money. If we agree on $500 and it costs me $200 to rent the dyno for half a day, and it ends up we're there for the whole day, I'm net zeroing.
Yeah. And that doesn't help your relationship with your tuner when you do that, by the way. So minimize that.
No, not so much.
No. So, do you have any other tips for folks to make dyno day go better, optimizing their dyno time, things they can do when they engage their tuner, anything that we missed?
It's always good, especially if you're not sure about something, to have it checked out before you get to the dyno. Before you show up to the shop, it's like, the car's not running right. It's in the tune. I'll just let the tuner handle it, because a lot of times it's not. Especially if the tuner has sent you a base map for your car, for your specs, for your injectors, and whatever other hardware you have on it. If they sent you a base map, and this is somebody that's tuned your platform, or at least is very familiar with that engine or that combination, and you're emailing them or calling them and saying like, it doesn't seem to be running right. I try to drive it down the road and it's sputtering and popping or backfiring, or it just seems really, 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 really lazy. If the tuner himself isn't going to take it on, it might be a good idea to have a third party look at it and take it to a shop that's familiar with your car, obviously, also, and have them look it over. It could be something as simple as you missed a vacuum line underneath the intake manifold that's causing it to run stupid lean, or it could be something more complicated, like the timing is off a tooth on one of the camshafts, or maybe like you got a motor from a importer and it's got bad leak down on one cylinder. Like you can compression test the motor, and it had to have, within 10 or 15 PSI across all the cylinders, but you do a leak down on it and find out it's got a cracked ringland or bad valves, and sure, the compression test comes out okay, and the leak down reveals it's got 20% leakage somewhere, and it's got basically a half a misfire.
Yeah.
So, don't just say, the tuner will figure it out. If you think something's up with that engine, and you can't figure it out yourself, call somebody who can, because that'll save a lot of headaches, both the day of the dyno and leading up to it.
Yeah. So if you run into that problem, I basically have, sort of, I would tell you, hey, I'm having this problem. Do we need to reschedule? You tell me yes or no. Or if you told me no, you'd be like, I'll help troubleshoot it as part of whatever. It'll cost you this, whatever. But be open with them. Be open with your tuner, because they don't want to make commitments to rent dyno time and things like that and it not come to fruition. So just be open.
Well, to preface back to your old car.
Yeah.
Your old car, when it was having a throttle position sensor issue, you're like, it's not running right, this and that on track. Couldn't really figure anything out. And I was like, all right, let's put it on the dyno and see what it's doing. And like first 3 pulls, everything was fine. I was like, I don't see anything wrong. And then I don't know if it was the 4th or 5th pull, all of a sudden I was like, whoa, what just happened? And I just go back and look at the data log and I'm like, oh, throttle position is making a staircase move downward, but I know I'm full throttle all the way through that section. And that's the nice thing about modern data logging, is you can just, you can pretty much see it all in real time, but to be able to graph it and go back and look at it and point to the computer and tell the customer or tell the car owner, this is the problem right here, and it's diagnosed in an instant. And that just makes life so much easier for tuners, as opposed to the old school way of scratching your head and trying different things until it makes power again.
Well, lucky for me, your H series throttle position sensor fit, because I didn't have one. So
yeah, I still don't.
What do you mean you still don't? All right, fine.
I still have your old bad one on my car.
All right, I'll send you a new one.
Don't worry about it. That's trade off for the vehicle speed sensor that I mushed.
No, it's whatever. These things happen, man. We work on cars. Accidents happen. Issues occur. But you need to be upfront, especially with your tuner. You need to be ready to make moves and be prepared. And if you can do everything you can do and you're forthright with all the information you have for your tuner, I bet 99 times out of 100 it's a smooth day. So most
of the time. Yeah,
I still have 98 more tunes to go before I get my 99 out of 100, but whatever.
I think you got 95 actually. Right. Maybe on this car, but yeah. And other simple things to have ready for your tuner. Gear ratios, know what your final drive is, know what all of your forward gears are.
Especially when you're obnoxious like me.
Well, so like for the Hondas, it's easy. Everybody puts an RDX injector in, and it's automatically in there. For other platforms, if you have non-OEM injectors in the car, try to provide your tuner with the data sheet for those injectors. That is like the biggest pivot point in tuning anything, is knowing how the fuel is going into the motor. And the more info you can give the tuner about that particular injector, especially if it's an injector that they're not necessarily familiar with, or from a company that doesn't necessarily publish their injector data, reaching out to that company, getting that data and having it either on a spreadsheet or printed out or whatever for your tuner can be paramount in saving time and getting rid of those just little nitpicky drivability issues that, your tip in is a little bit off, or just little odds and ends that make drivability not as smooth, that drives people like me nuts, because I want the car to leave driving like it was built that way from the factory.
Yeah. I mean, my cars, I never knew what they drove like from the factory, but they always drive fine. So, and I don't have RDX injectors on the new car. I did have them on the old car, but I can see where pattern, volume, the CC rate, all that stuff has to play big on what you can do.
Latency and dead time come into it. Voltage comes into it. There's a ton of specs for fuel injectors that are usually inputtable into the software, that really can affect the calibration overall. Yeah. And just being off on one of those tables can have a drastic effect on how the car drives and performs, how much power it makes even.
Yeah, but apparently we left some really important stuff till the 55th minute of this episode, but right.
Well, hopefully people are still listening.
They usually do. Yeah. They usually listen all the way through. I have lots of statistics on it, so it's wild.
Yeah, it's not so much really for the Honda Challenge crowd, because all the Honda stuff is pretty much populated with the most common and used injectors, at least. So it's for the Honda stuff, it's just as easy as clicking a drop down menu and it's automatically there. But other platforms, if you're LS or Coyote Ford or whatever else, especially if you're tuning with like HP tuners, or I don't have much experience with SCT, but the little bit that I do, it's enough to know that having the right injector specs, especially on anything that's supercharged or boosted in general, makes the biggest world of difference, and makes it so the tuner's not sitting there scratching their head going, I don't understand why this isn't working.
Yeah. All right. Anything else?
I think that's about it. I can't really think of anything else. Just like you said, be prepared. Have a game plan going in there. If you want to try stuff, try different hardware changes. I mean, something as simple as just an intake tube on a Honda can make a big difference in how the power is delivered and where it comes in, and not necessarily overall, but can broaden your power curve through different RPM ranges.
Yeah.
So, have all that stuff ready to go. Have a game plan and
communicate.
Don't be too pushy with your tuner, because they already got a million things going through their head without you poking your head in the window every 10 minutes going, what are you doing now?
Oh, that was totally me on my first dyno session.
No, you're not so bad. But I've had other people that it's like, what'd you do? I'm like, just like, can I look at the data log first?
All right. Well, I think that's going to be an episode. I know you don't like to share secrets so much, but I wanted you to come on and preach the gospel, because this topic can be, I won't say make or break, but it can frustrate people. I know Steve's been frustrated. I know Meng's been frustrated. Not for anything they did or didn't do, but their process at the dyno has not always worked out for them. And so it's good to know. It's good to know things, and be prepared. I've heard Ranger running around in the background and whining a little bit. May have to come bring him an extra treat, because
hoping that wasn't noticeable, but
it's probably not noticeable. Well, you're welcome anytime on the show. We don't have to drop secrets. We can just educate in a manner that is beneficial for everyone. we tend not to drop real secrets. We just make you think about them. So,
yeah, just put the bug in your ear and plant the seed of doubt.
All right, Deren. I appreciate it. You're always welcome, man, and thanks for coming on the show.
Con, thank you. It's a good show.
Until next time, keep working on yourself, keep working on the car, and let's get faster.